Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-hosts, Matty B and Jeff Meyer. Going to talk some football for you guys. We got a big weekend ahead. If there's any technical hiccups, it's all Skype's fault once again, as we had some issues getting going, but hoping that holds off. Going to get right into it with high tempo. Matt, how did you guys do this week and what do you got for us?
Did much better weekend this week. Played Williamsburg. And finally got ourselves back on track. Offensively, put up a lot of yardage, scored a good bit of points, got us going back in the right direction. First road win. We're 1-1 now on the year. Looking to head back home facing West Branch this week. Should be a good matchup. West Branch throws the ball a whole pile, so the game will probably last until 11:30 midnight. So if you're in the area, you definitely see some good football.
Very cool. I know I ribbed on you a little bit last week, and I saw that Willie Taggart had a loss, and you had a win, so going in opposite directions there. I can only wish you continued success.
There we go.
Jeff, what do you got for us this week?
My high tempo topic of the week is WVU. Wow, can't talk. WVU. It's a mouthful. Played horrible against JMU in the home opener. Expected a little more out of them. Head coach's first game was not pretty. I believe they were down at halftime. It was ugly. Only won by 7. Didn't even cover the spread. So doesn't look good for them in their Big 12 action that's going to be coming up in a few weeks. They play Mizzou this upcoming weekend. I think they're a 14-point underdog against Mizzou. So it looks like they're going to start the season out 1-1. It'll be interesting to see how the Big 12 competition goes.
Well, I will want to say, Jeff, everyone here that listened to the show for a long time knows that you're a big Pitt guy. I'm watching in the video. For those that are on podcast, you're wearing a WVU jersey. What's up with that? West Virginia now?
No, I started grad school here, so I got to represent a little bit. Hey, I'll always have the Pitt blue and gold in my heart, but I'm a grad student here, so got to represent a little bit.
Well, you were struggling spelling it. You could just say West Virginia next time. That's a pro tip because I almost stumbled on it myself. So definitely probably easier for you.
Yeah, tongue twister. So it's just West Virginia from now on. But hey, at least one thing I will say, I'll never sport some Penn State colors. I'll tell you that.
Yet.
West Virginia and Pitt.
Yet. Next thing I know, I'll hear a call. You're like, hey, I'm going for my PhD at Penn State. I'm a huge Nittany Lions fan. You'll have a Jopa tattoo in no time.
Oh, I don't know about all that.
All right.
Hey, unless Barkley wins me the fantasy league this year.
Then I know you've been looking up those Penn State jerseys of Barkley. I know that's what you're going for. Because you don't like the Giants, let's be honest. You're not going to wear a Giants jersey around, but you'll wear a Penn State one.
I don't know about all that.
You already have a Pitt one. You have a West Virginia one. What's one more team in that area? Penn State. Go with that.
Yeah.
They have the biggest stadium you can fit right in whenever they come to Pitt and you go see them play. If they ever renew that rivalry, right?
Yeah. We play one more time. We play in 2 weeks. Pitt, Penn State. I'm getting the game.
That's in Penn State though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So unless you're just trying to fit in with that Saquon Barkley jersey. Talking about the reminiscing in the past, how great they were 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But let's get into our big one, Auburn and Oregon. Now, that was pretty much the only big matchup that were ranked over the weekend. And I will say that I don't know how I feel about Gus Malzahn. I know he's back calling plays, and Oregon looked like they could take control, but it's the same old Oregon I've seen for almost a decade now. They seem fast. They have a lead. Put them away. Their offense isn't built to play a close game like that, and it seems like every time, shades of Cam Newton, where you have Auburn down late in the game, and they have a big play that I think last time it was like a broken run where the guy wasn't down. He got up and ran for the first down. They kicked the field goal, if I'm remembering correctly. This game, you have Oregon. They drop back. Auburn drops back. There's 6 seconds left. It's very little time. And instead of just going for the field goal, because they're in field goal range, at least if they weren't, they were close. I think Oregon ran a cover 2. It was hard to tell from their video, but the cornerback came up and he played in the flat. The safety came across from Oregon And so they only had one guy deep covering the slot or the split receiver that was running deep. He just ran a straight route. The quarterback threw it short of the goal line, which you never really want to do in that situation. All the Oregon defender had to do was play the ball. Look up, play the ball, knock it away. I thought he got to the receiver early. He hit him. He didn't wrap up. If you're going to hit him, you're going to go for the tackle. You have to actually tackle the guy. You can't sit back, let him run you over, and make the catch. He leans right into it, gets the touchdown, and I think there was a couple seconds actually after that because they had a penalty for celebrating. They said he spiked the ball. He barely threw the ball down. That was not a celebration spike, so I did not agree with that call. I feel like they were trying to give it another thrilling ending on Oregon's part, and that's a conspiracy theory there, but they definitely had a kickoff that almost broke it. Auburn, just kick it at that point. Kick it out of bounds. That's a pro tip. You already had the 15-yard penalty, so you're kicking from further back. If you kick the ball out of bounds, it goes to what, the 40-yard line? So they're going to go back further than what he's going to get whenever he runs it back. Just kick it out of bounds. Who gives a shit? There's only 6 seconds left. He's not going to be able to throw it down for a touchdown. That's a pro tip for any coaches out there. Think outside the box. Know the rules. Kick it out of bounds deep. What's the big deal? They just get it at what, the 40-yard line? What, 5 yards back? I don't think they even let him choose that. I mean, what happens? You just keep kicking it out of bounds. They're not going to let it happen 20 times in a row. As long as your guy can kick it past the 50-yard line, which you know he's going to do, test the rule book. See what happens. That would be my call because you let the guy run right up the middle with a squib kick. Squib kicks are always dumb as hell. How many times have you seen a squib kick where the guy doesn't return it further than he normally would have? You're not giving your guys time to set their lanes up. Every time I see a squib kick, I think, well, this is going to be a deep return. It never fails to amaze me. Coach, what are your thoughts on that?
I think you can get away with a squib kick. You just have to make sure that you're putting it on the ground, giving it a chance to bounce around. Maybe scoop that bounce up.
How many times have you practiced a squib kick?
Multiple. Because we prepare for all situations.
Multiple? You mean like 2 or 3? Because you're not kicking it. You're not practicing as much as you are a regular kick. That's for sure.
We kick it about, we practice it about the same as we do our regular kickoffs. It's important to practice those situations because you never know. Because especially in the high school ranks, a lot of times you'll say, if the opposing team has a good returner, they'll say, hey, don't kick it to this kid. And what ends up happening? It's like a direct line shot right to that person. So you end up having to practice some of those situations. And it's always my favorite whenever that happens too. Because you get all the Dorito eaters up in the stands that are like, oh, why would you kick it to that guy? And it makes you just think, well, maybe I would have thought that. It's like, I didn't go out there and kick it to him. Like, yes, we game planned it around not kicking it to the best athlete on the field, but, sometimes that happens.
I don't think you ever thought about kicking out of bounds, have you? What's the high school rule?
Because a lot of times they'll just make you re-kick it. I mean, it happened during our game where they kicked it out of bounds, and we said, line it back up and re-kick it.
I didn't know that was a thing. I've never seen anyone do that. Maybe it's a high school rule.
Because you can either take the ball to 35 or re-kick it, and so it makes sense when you look at it from the kickoff standpoint that they just ran down after the football and they're winded, and now they got to re-kick it. They're not going to get down there as fast, and it gives you a chance to set up for a better return anyhow. So a pro move is to make them re-kick it and make them run down the field again because most of them aren't going to be hauling ass like they did the first time down the field.
That's why my strategy is just to keep kicking it out of bounds. And eventually the ref will either have to step in and say, yo, what's going on here? Because you got to trust your kicker that he can kick it at least 50 yards. A kicker is going to be able to kick it further than the quarterback can throw it. Most likely, I would imagine. So even if you push it all the way back to the 1 yard line, he's still going to be able to kick it 50 yards out of bounds. So then they'll just have to take it at the 50 and try to throw a Hail Mary. I'd like those odds better than a kick return when they only need, well, I think Oregon needed a touchdown, but even if you only needed a field goal or something, I think that's some strategy that you can throw in there, and that's the way I'm going to leave it. Jeff, what are your thoughts on that game?
Well, my thoughts on the kickoff, I'm not really a fan of squibbing it. I think, and especially at the college level, you practice more regular kickoffs, kick it deep, trust your team, establish your lanes that you practice over and over. I mean, of course, you're going to practice squibs in like the pooch kick scenario, but I think if you're a disciplined team, you just kick it deep and rely on your kick team to make the appropriate play. As far as that last play of the game where that guy ended up scoring, I thought that was very, very poor defensive covering. In that situation, just tackle the guy. Because it's not like the NFL, it's not a spot foul. It's going to be a 15-yard penalty. I like my odds a little bit better there if he just tackles them. But I think for young corners there, play the ball. Know your positioning, know where the ball's at, play the ball. I think it was a pretty bad play, but and the thing with the game that really makes me mad, it was the Pac-12 failing again against the SEC. It is over and over, year in and year out. The big schools for the Pac-12 blow it against the SEC. And here's the thing that's really going to stink going down the road. Oregon, is currently ranked 11 going in that game. Even if they have a good season, they run the table, then they, go 11 and 1. They're going to have this blemish of Auburn, and especially if Auburn drops a few games and they finish the SEC with 3 or 4 losses, it's going to look really bad for Oregon and their chances again in the playoffs. So if you're the Pac-12, you got to start winning these games against SEC opponents, especially early in the year. Because if they run the table and Auburn loses 4 games, they're not getting in the playoffs.
I'll say this, Auburn's up to number 10, so they're getting ready to have that showdown in the West, because I think LSU is going to drop off until they prove me wrong and are able to beat Alabama. I don't think they're going to be able to even be a competition in that SEC West. Meanwhile, you have Auburn that's been competitive under Gus Malzahn, so you just have a team that's sitting right there in case something were to happen. But Alabama has such an easy schedule. It's like cutting right through silk, baby. You got Ole Miss. What a powerful matchup Ole Miss is. They just lost to Memphis. How embarrassing.
Yeah.
I have that on my topic as SEC upsets. Then you have, oh my gosh, Alabama. Don't they have that crossover game with Tennessee? That big rivalry game? Oh, wait. Tennessee lost to Georgia State. So 2 of their big games, they're tough SEC matchups. They're playing against joke teams. You can't even tell me that they're going to be a tough matchup. Don't even give me that. And if they were to lose to Tennessee, I'm sure they would make an excuse up, much like they did for teams like Oklahoma last year that lost to Texas. They were like, well, Texas is a great team. Ignore the fact that they lost to Maryland every year they played them. Like, that's not a big deal. Maryland, they're better than what their record is, or Maryland's going through some tough times with some scandals. But that don't count Texas out for that reason. They're just going to find an excuse to try to boost up those big teams, no matter what. So, Oregon, I'm actually glad that they lost, and I hope the Pac-12 continues to lose. I hope that they make money and they're competitive, but I want them to get fed up with the fact that they keep missing the playoffs. And same goes with the Big Ten. If Ohio State was to miss it again, close, I would hope those teams would start to talk about expanding the playoffs and having automatic bids, because I think there should be automatic bids. It's the only way. I don't know how teams or fans of teams like Pitt and Virginia and UNC with Mac Brown. I've heard some people down here talking about, hey, what if Mac Brown runs a table and they get it? They only have 1 loss or something and they win the ACC. Guys, do you really think they're going to get in the playoffs? Do you really think that? They're going to have every excuse in the book not to include them. Well, it was a fluke loss they had, or their schedule's not as strong. But what they mean deep down is they're not a big enough program. They're going to try to find a way to shove in Notre Dame and like in Oklahoma, Texas. They're already setting it up. So getting left out is the only way it's going to make change. Go ahead, Matt.
With Notre Dame getting slammed last year in the playoffs, there's no way that using them as an independent, there's no way they'll put them back in.
They'll be back in.
If a team, and you use the hypothetical of UNC, if UNC loses 1 game, somehow knocks off Clemson in the ACC championship, there's no way they're left out. It's just not happening.
It's going to happen.
With one of your front runners being Oregon as one of your Power 5 teams, and they just lost. I think they just whiffed not only on a playoff berth opportunity, I think they also missed out on the Heisman opportunity, because I don't think Herbert now is going to be able to put up the numbers in the resume to put himself still in the Heisman race. I think in both chances, he completely blew it right then and there. I mean, the Pac-12 had 10 straight losses to ranked SEC teams. So, I mean, realistically, you're looking at this like they're just not getting it done.
I think the problem is they need to play Florida. Florida's always good for a loss or two. Play them. They're always ranked. What about Mississippi State? Start scheduling some teams that you know choke and that are always going to be ranked no matter what.
Ole Miss, now that Hugh Freeze is gone.
I think that's what the problem is. Why are you scheduling Oregon or Auburn? Why are you doing that? Schedule Mississippi State, or maybe like I don't think Tennessee was receiving votes, but what about Missouri? Schedule a team like that,
yep.
And then you can rack up those wins and get some confidence. Don't schedule the big boys. Jeez, what are you doing? That's just asking for a loss on your resume. South Carolina, but back in the day they had Spurrier, so you had to be careful. I would say, go ahead.
He was still a loser when he was at South Carolina. He did nothing there except go golfing all the time.
Who, Spurrier?
Yeah, he retired there.
Matt, he had like 5 straight wins over Dabo. Dabo didn't turn Clemson around until the head ball coach retired. Look that up.
He only did one every year. That's why he was Clemsoning.
I think the last year before he turned around was the WVU year where they got spanked by 77 points in the Orange Bowl. That was like the year Spurrier said, "Hey, I'm going to retire," and then Dabo said, "Thank God." And he's like, he prayed every day after that. Didn't you hear his recruiting speech? Thank Jesus every day that Steve Spurrier retired. I can get some of those recruits down here. Get my boys strength up with some Ovaltine or whatever that stuff is they're using.
Ovaltine.
I will say that the SEC, it doesn't matter. I think that it's ridiculous that they keep talking about Georgia getting in, and they keep saying how Auburn still has to face Georgia. Hey, guess what, guys? They don't. They don't play them at all. Their schedule is so weak. People keep bumping up saying they got to play Georgia. They got to play the SEC East champion if they win the West. If they lose the West to Auburn, let's say Alabama's undefeated and Auburn gets like one loss or whatever, and Auburn has a tiebreaker like a few years ago, guess what? Alabama doesn't have to play Georgia. If Georgia loses to Florida or someone stupid, Missouri, could you imagine if Missouri made it in the East? And they have twice. Yeah. So in the past, since they've joined, see, how can the Big 12 be so weak if one of their lower members can just join and win the division twice? Doesn't make any sense.
They were in it in 13 when Auburn won the SEC.
Yeah, exactly. So people on the ESPN keep talking about how Alabama has a very tough schedule that ends with Georgia. It does not. We don't know that yet. It could. They might not play them at all. And right now the odds are against it. So I would say what you're looking at is, are they going to get 2 teams in? That's what should piss off the other conferences. And like you said, Matt, you can't tell me that if the committee's sitting there licking their chops over a 1-loss Auburn, 1-loss Alabama, 1-loss Georgia, and they're going to say, you know what, we'll take that 1-loss UNC. Hell no, they're not taking them. Hell no, because you have the same situation in the Big Ten. You could potentially have Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan all beating each other up. And same with Notre Dame. If Notre Dame runs the table and has 1 loss and they beat Michigan, who could end up in the top 10 again, they're in. I don't care if they got killed last year. Whoever, Joe Schmo from the ACC, hell, it could even be Virginia Tech. It doesn't matter. You could put as big a name as you want. If it's not Clemson this year, they're not getting in. I'll write that down. Because I think they're going to just pick whatever big name school, because there's just too many big names in the mix this year. You have the 3 from the SEC. I mean, you could even add LSU in there too. 3 from the Big 10. You have 2 from the Big 12. That's your field. And then Notre Dame. I mean, out west, I think they're done. Even if Mike Leach were to run the table and undefeated Washington State, I feel like they're going to keep them out. They'll make every excuse in the book, and I think that would be a sham that would push the playoff to implode. So I really hope it happens. I would hate if my man Mike Leach got left out, but I feel like that has to happen. An undefeated team from a Power 5 has to be left out. And unlike that year with TCU and Baylor, the conference has to speak up and say, yo, this is bullshit. Like, we're going to play in our bowl game and we're going to claim a national championship, and then the heads will explode. Because everyone made fun of it when UCF did it.
Yeah.
But if a major team like Washington State were to run the table, or hell, even UNC, let's say they got left out because they're going to put a one-loss Georgia in over the strength of their schedule, hell, that'd be even a better situation. Undefeated Oklahoma, an undefeated Ohio State, an undefeated Alabama, and then one-loss Georgia over an undefeated UNC. I would love it. Because they would try to whatever they can do to put Georgia in. Just blow the system up. I don't care at this point. Because it's not making the games fun. Let's see what else. Any other big games around? The other one that I caught was Utah. Everyone's talking about how great Utah is. BYU had so many turnovers. Why? What are you doing? First off, why are you scheduling the Holy War on like 10 o'clock on a Thursday, opening weekend? What is wrong with you guys? That's like the biggest draw in Utah and one of the bigger games that the Pac-12 can promote. I think it wasn't BYU, though, so maybe because they're independent, they were just trying to get the money. I don't know how their TV deals work. But hey, guys, how about you work on promoting it? Promote it to a better national audience. Hell, play it Saturday. What game was on after that Oregon game? Nothing that I remember. I think I fell asleep. I think there was a game on. I don't even remember. Hell, I don't know. We'll start with you, Jeff. What did you see over the weekend?
I don't know. I'm still stuck on the whole Auburn Oregon thing, and talk about your point though with UNC. I think you made a lot of good points, but if UNC would run the table and beat Clemson, I can't see them letting an ACC school out that just defeated Clemson, who won 2 national championships in the last 3 years. 4 years, how many they are. I think that gives them enough validity to put in a UNC or a school in the ACC by just knocking off Clemson. Because right now, Clemson is the team to beat, in my opinion, just based on last couple of years, Dabo Swinney and the offense. But I think the really thing that makes me mad, though, about the playoff system is year in and year out, Notre Dame has so much hype, so much publicity that they're almost a shoo-in as long as they have one loss or they go undefeated.
They take the ACC bid. The ACC dug their own grave whenever they made that deal. It's the same deal that killed the Big East. And that's what I'm saying. Hey, let's say the Big Ten that has Ohio State undefeated, Big 12 has Oklahoma undefeated, and Alabama's undefeated. And the last 2 teams are between an undefeated UNC and an undefeated Notre Dame. And I don't know if they play each other this year. But let's say, just based on all equal resumes, which team are you leaving out? And it's UNC.
Yeah, it will be.
I mean, I don't care if they beat Clemson. If you're looking at those 5 teams and you're just going to look at the resume, they're going to come up with some excuse saying, well, Notre Dame, they beat Michigan and USC and whatever other teams were on their schedule that were ranked, because they're going to have a ton of them. And then UNC is only going to have, one ranked team they play?
Yeah.
Do they play the Cuse? At that point, who knows if they're even going to be ranked anymore?
This year, the one thing that's going to save is this year. I mean, I'll say save because I don't want to see the college football playoff to implode like you do. The one thing that will save us this year with Notre Dame is they have to travel to Georgia. They play at Georgia this year, so that's going to be. I don't think they're going to travel to Georgia and win, so that's going to help a lot. But if they beat Georgia and go undefeated, there's going to be a lot of problems this year with the playoff.
I hope they blow them out. I hope Notre Dame just absolutely kills them by 70. Just because I know that they keep talking about wanting the Notre Dame to be oh, we need to fix the Notre Dame problem by having them forced into the ACC. Behind the scenes, a lot of fans want that. But at this point, there's really no reason for them to join because they already signed the contract. They get the ACC's bid. So if Notre Dame's right there and they're going to pick between the two, they're going to take Notre Dame for that Orange Bowl every time. And then guess who gets 0 money? The ACC, because they're dumb. And they were like, I wonder what killed the Big East. Hell, they even did a 30 for 30 on it. They made it about the sneakers. No, it was a television deal with Notre Dame. They weren't splitting their money up. And guess what? Whenever they get left out and left out and left out, luckily, Clemson came out of nowhere and boosted that league up. Could you imagine if Clemson never made that jump? And right now, the best team in the ACC is still Florida State. with how they've imploded. Good Lord. They'd be in a worse position than the Pac-12. Hell, we could even talk about, we'll just skip right into the ACC stuff. So ACC, I didn't even have the ACC network. Did you guys?
Yes.
What did you have? DirecTV?
Yeah.
Because down here in Raleigh, I think you have to have like certain cables or whatever, but I don't have that. I was just trying to get it. Of course, they were going into the old blacked out routine. And so I even checked to see if my parents had access to it. They don't have it. So you're back in the old situation that I knew was going to happen. Maybe if I paid for like Spectrum or whatever deal is local down here, and maybe it's tied in with ESPN Plus. I don't know, because I don't think that launches until November. I guess they do have it, so maybe they're included. I'm just not going to pay for it until they do like their movies or whatever. Maybe I'm thinking Disney Plus. I don't even know, but I couldn't watch the games, and it's not like the other networks that, I mean, if I wanted to watch them, and I have my own thing on the Big Ten coming up next, but I have complaints with them as well. But the ACC, I'm saying you're putting all your eggs into that Clemson basket. I thought Pitt might have a chance against Virginia. Pitt is done.
Yep.
I mean, I don't even know what to think of them. Jeff, did you go to the game?
No, went to the West Virginia game.
Already turning.
Already converting, baby. But yeah, it's gonna be a bad year for Pitt. They play Ohio at home this week. God, I only think they're like a 6-point favorite or something like that over Ohio. Ohio University.
What do you think they should do with Narduzzi?
I don't know. I've been a huge Narduzzi fan, but if this continues, let's just say hypothetically they lose this weekend. If they lose this weekend to Ohio, they're going to start the season out 0-3 because they're going to lose to Penn State. If they start 0-3, I think this is Narduzzi's last year, because if they lose to Virginia, ACC opponent, then Ohio, who they shouldn't even be in the same ballpark, and then they lose to Penn State, Narduzzi's got to go. They got to rebuild again. I don't know. I thought they had it there a couple years ago, and you had James Conner. You had a good defense. He never put the pieces together. And as we've talked before the season, they didn't do a good job recruiting. They didn't get the Whitfield kids. They're not getting anyone really from Western PA. It just doesn't look good for Pitt. So I'm expecting them to win this weekend and hopefully play Penn State all right. But this might be Narduzzi's final year.
Do you think they'll fire him if they lose to Ohio, beat Penn State, and then lose all the rest of their games?
Honestly, I would be okay with that. if they go 1-11 and beat Penn State, I say you bring Narduzzi back for one more year.
He would have split the series then.
Yeah, 2-2. Yeah, because they won the first year when Penn State came to Pitt, and they lost the last two straight. Last year was a massacre. I don't think it should have been that bad in Pittsburgh, but things got away from them. They had a close first half, and then Penn State just came out second half, had better coaching, better schemes, made some halftime adjustments that Narduzzi hasn't been doing the last couple of years. He doesn't make those halftime adjustments. I feel like What's that?
They got killed in field position last year is what ended up happening. They spent the majority of the game pinned deep. When you're playing deep like that, you don't have a lot of wiggle room. And you get very vanilla in your play calling because you don't want to give up a safety or turn the ball over in the red zone. So they ended up playing very vanilla, and all it did was it just made the situation worse and worse, and they could never flip the field.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And to add to that, though, I feel like those are sometimes like in-game decisions you have to make at halftime. You have to look at the first half, evaluate it, and sometimes make new decisions, new strategies for the second half. In the last 3 years, Narduzzi gets out-coached in the second half. When James Franklin, who's a subpar Big Ten coach, is out-coaching you every single season, you're in trouble. I mean, even that first year when Pitt beat Penn State like 42-39 or something like that, for the majority of the game, I'd say Penn State outplayed Pitt. And Franklin outcoached Narduzzi. So this is going to be 4 straight years where James Franklin, who, like I said, is a subpar coach, is out coaching Narduzzi bad. So I think it's time that Narduzzi either 1, gets let go, or 2, changes his coaching staff, brings in some new guys, some fresh blood, makes some more halftime adjustments. Something's got to change. the culture there is not where it should be.
Where do you think they go from there? Who do they even hire?
That's the problem. Go ahead, Matt.
The answer to it is that you don't fire, because part of the problem at Pitt is that they've had 3 offensive coordinators in the last 4 years. And when you have that level of instability, you can't build anything. It's tough to build a recruiting base, because if you're a Michigan or West Virginia and you're going into the WPIAL and you're going to try to pull these kids, what are you saying? Why would you go to Pitt? Why would you play at Heinz Field? And why would you not know who your coordinator is or potentially your head coach? So you have all this negative recruiting going against you, even though, when you look at the numbers and you look at what Pitt's producing and sending to the NFL, they're sending more players to the NFL than a lot of these other teams. But I think what you end up happening is they're constantly flipping coordinators, which means they're putting new schemes into place. The kids are having to learn schemes that they're unfamiliar with. And you look at some of these other programs that are having consistency from year to year, and those are the programs that are fairly successful. And you have the ones like Alabama, but I mean, as a whole, the schemes I don't think are changing as much, because they have a closet of 35 former head coaches that just step right into that next role. I think for Pitt, for them to take the next step, what they got to do is they got to go kind of away from the rest of the ACC, kind of go in the mold of what Georgia Tech did under Paul Johnson, or what you see with Wisconsin under Paul Chryst. And you're gonna lose these battles to the higher speed athletes in South Florida. You're not going to recruit Florida. You're not going to recruit Georgia. Go with the heavier sets. Go with more tight end personnel. Go heavy personnel groupings. Run the football. And I think that maybe they can be more competitive by being different, as opposed to trying to incorporate some of the spread schemes where they're not going to get the talent and the speed to do it.
I have to disagree with that. I think you can 100% get the speed. I think a lot of the speed thing is a myth. I think the big difference is the guys that the Alabamas and those pull, they're bigger guys that are just as fast. So instead of having a 6'1" guy that runs a 4.4, you're now having a 6'5" guy that runs a 4.4 playing receiver. But you can still win speed to speed. Look at what Oregon did. I mean, you can do that. Look at what West Virginia did. Though back in the Rich Rod days, West Virginia wasn't bringing in gigantic athletes. They had small speed guys, and they were able to kill those bigger teams like Georgia head-to-head and Clemson head-to-head, because they had an advantage due to some of their schemes, and I think that's what Pitt needs to focus on. Right now, they're kind of a tweener school. They're still running a lot of pro stuff. Guess what? You can't run it. Not even like Michigan struggled running the pro stuff. That's why Harbaugh flipped everything this year. If you're getting the biggest, the strongest, the fastest, you can't run pro unless you're like 3 deep like Alabama. Because guess what? You get an injury, you're down a quarterback, you're down a lineman, you're going to struggle. And at Pitt, you just don't have the depth. If a school like Michigan struggles running it, and USC struggles running it, and Notre Dame has their struggles, they went 4-8 a couple years ago, guess what? Pitt's not going to be successful. They're just not. They need to go and try to do something that's a little bit ahead of everybody else. They need to do what Baylor did by when they had Bryles come in. They were doing something that was so unique that it was unbelievable. They're never going to be like a TCU. TCU went the opposite route. They were able to get the kids that fell through the cracks, and then they were able to play more of a pro-style Wisconsin-type ball. Wisconsin's fielding a lot based on their big linemen that they're able to pull in that same area. Guess what? Pitt already lost most of those local recruiting battles. They're not going to win them back. You don't have the program that Wisconsin has. Barry Alvarez took decades to build that up. Hell, he even named himself bowl game coach when they had coaches leave. He's a guy, I think one of their coaches left because he said Alvarez had too much of a fingerprint on that program. Pitt doesn't have a guy like that. So they're never going to be able to replicate that. I think they should go the West Virginia and Baylor route, where they say, we're going to find an innovator from wherever, let him come in and run their stuff. Rich Rod was running like a 3-3-5 on defense. People thought that was dumb as hell. And he was able to make it successful. And then Baylor with like their spread, their air raid stuff, you can go whatever route you want. I mean, hell, Lincoln Riley was the offensive coordinator at East Carolina when they were good a few years ago before he went to Oklahoma. You need to be able to find a guy that's young and innovative like that. And like Matt said, keep Narduzzi there. I don't think it matters at this point. You need to bring in some young coaches that are going to stick around for a few years and that are going to be able to boost up recruiting. And that's what's going to take you to the next step. And until they do that, I mean, they're going to be stuck. They don't have a Mac Brown that's going to walk through that door, like a retired great coach or a Steve Spurrier. They're just not going to get a guy like that. It's just not going to happen. That's what turned around some of those other programs. And hell, UNC's not even turned around yet. I'm just using them as a hypothetical. I mean, they barely beat South Carolina. We don't know how good they are. But you're not going to have a big-name coach. They had their chance with Les Miles. He was available for a few years. He's not coming to Pitt now. They probably could have got him. He went to Kansas. They sat with Narduzzi. Now you're going to have to, look, you're not going to get a big-name coach. You're just not. So let's shift gears, though, Matt. Let's let you get into it. Florida State. Go ahead. It's yours.
It was a good first half because I took a power nap after that, getting ready for our fantasy draft. Woke back up. From what I saw in the first half, Kendall Browse did a phenomenal job with the offense. They were scoring. They were moving the ball. I thought, they're going to run away with this one. This is exactly what I was hoping to see out of the start of this season. A lot of the issues that they had going in, the issues with the offensive line, not being able to establish the run, playing absolutely no defense. They looked functional in the first half. Came back out in the second half and then just absolutely laid an egg. And everything under the sun that could have went wrong, went wrong. The defense, I've tried to be patient with the adjustment of the scheme. And I thought, looking at last year's team, it was like 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. And when you're constantly giving the ball away, it puts a lot of additional pressure on the defense. And my initial reaction after rewatching the game was I still kind of thought, the offense put them in a tough spot simply because they kept scoring so fast. I mean, there was a 4-play drive, there was a 1-play drive. They were scoring quickly, and they weren't giving, the defense wasn't getting any breaks. But when you look at it overall, defensively, they were misaligned the majority of the game, and they ended up just giving up chunks of yardage consistently. So that hurt them. And what makes matters worse is then you have Willie Taggart going into his press conference and saying really stupid stuff like, well, the training staff should have been pushing hydration on the team earlier in the week. It's like, you play in Tallahassee. That's such a stupid narrative that, I don't even know why you would even push it. Why guys are dehydrated or it's your home field. You're supposed to be prepared for it. That's completely unacceptable to not be prepared like that. And so where I thought they should have ran away with it, I think they got complacent, and a 10-win team from last year, Boise, came back and put the boots to them. Hats off to Boise, but it never should have been in that spot to begin with.
Yeah, I will say that I'm going to give you the same question, although I think Florida State has a higher basement than what Pitt has. If Florida State doesn't make a bowl game, but they end up beating Clemson, where do you think Willie Taggart stands at the end of this year?
I think Taggart needs more time. I think that, looking at this from a head coach's perspective, I think Willie Taggart inherited a mess, and there have been stories that have been written about how crappy Jimbo Fisher left the program. I don't know, to be honest with you, how terrible it actually is. But when you watch how bad the offensive line is and you see what the recruiting, what players were left at the time that he left and the holes that they needed to address, there were a lot of problems that needed fixed. I don't think that he deserves to be fired at the end of this year. But what I have an issue with is they're essentially in the same boat as Nebraska, but you don't hear any of this pressure on Scott Frost.
Matt, that's because they're undefeated and they're in the national championship talk.
They are. Well, I joked with you about the national championship talk, and they struggled against South Alabama. They struggled against
Matt.
Florida.
Not even joking. Florida. Did you look at the rankings? They're ranked this week.
I told you that's why I was messing with you last week. Everyone is so high on them, and I don't understand why. And there's no heat. Scott Frost didn't make a bowl last year. He had a dumpster fire of a team, and they're anointing him the second coming of Christ. And I don't understand. And I follow him just as closely as I follow Taggart because I like offensively the kind of stuff that he was running. So I like to try to see, are there things that I can incorporate into my own offense? But to be honest with you, I feel like it almost makes me want to defend Willie Taggart more because I see he's trying to make the changes that need done. But the biggest thing that I think he's going to have to address is this defensive coordinator situation because they talked about this transition to a 3-4, and they didn't have the guys to do it. They didn't have the depth to do it. I think they were better off staying with an even front and staying with the 4 down linemen and just doing almost like a nickel package where they could have 2 linebackers and rotate some of the defensive backs around, bringing pressure and playing more man coverage. I think that would help them out, but they keep trying to stick to this matched quarters that since Barnett comes from the Narduzzi, the Antonio family of defense, and they just look lost. And I think they're better off just pinning their ears back and getting after it.
Yeah, I'll say I'm not sure what else they can do at this point because you're switching systems. You're going from more of that pro style to what essentially the spread that Taggart had and was implementing at Oregon. And now Florida State's going to go through those growing pains. And that's why it's going to be interesting to see because you're going to go through the same stuff that it's going to take a few years. I mean, look at what Harbaugh did, switching kind of from the same thing. You came over from a guy like Brady Hoke that was just doing all pro stuff, and he was nowhere near as successful as what Jimbo Fisher was. And it's still taken Harbaugh years. Now, fortunately, his basement was 8 wins, and it seems like he's going to keep getting 10 wins a year, at least close to double digits every year, where Willie Taggart, his problem was that he missed a bowl game. And at Florida State, that's a big no-no. But on to your point about Scott Frost, I don't know why they're getting the hype. And I'll say that with a straight face. I have up here the Big Ten dominates. Nebraska was not one of those teams. Michigan played well, even though some people were being downers on that game because 2 turnovers early, had Middle Tennessee score 2 touchdowns. After that, it was a complete whitewash. They don't fumble those balls. Who knows if Middle Tennessee even scores? Ohio State did the other opposite. They jumped out to an early lead, and I don't know if it was Lane Kiffin making adjustments, but then they struggled for a bit after that, and FAU scored some garbage touchdowns, but again, played basically a nobodies. So they won by double digits, both those teams. I feel like they are in their spots. Penn State destroyed Idaho. I saw that Penn State had to pay a ridiculous amount of money for them to come, of course. So just a deserved beatdown. And instead, you would think, okay, well, that's good enough for the Big Ten. Michigan State didn't cover, and I almost talked about it on the show last week because I thought, Michigan State's offense sucks. There's no way they're going to cover a 30-point spread or whatever it was. They played Tulsa. Did they cover that? No. Did they win by double digits? Yes. So I would say that they dominated enough for a no-name school. It's not like Tennessee where these teams are losing. Purdue did drop one to Nevada. But Purdue, it's hard to tell even if they're any good. That's the whole reason why Ohio State missed the playoffs last year, because they lost to a Purdue team that's not very good. The same team that everyone else beats the crap out of. So the fact that Nebraska struggled so bad and Scott Frost is just getting it past because what? In his second year, he won a national championship at UCF. So he wins that one. And then he's coming to Nebraska and people think his second year he's going to win the national championship there. He's not even going to win the West.
Quarterback, because this freshman quarterback's a sophomore now. So they expect that quantum leap. I actually think he probably would have been more successful just staying at UCF, because I think he was able to underground recruit some of those other talent, like not the top tier, but he was getting enough of that middle ground that you were talking about earlier, that he could have made that successful.
I think that if he would have waited, I think he just went to Nebraska because he's an alum, and he was going to take that. I think Nebraska's in a tough spot, because guess what? They lost to Texas recruiting ground, and before that, a lot of people debate this, but they lost partial qualifiers. So back in like their 80s and 90s, they would take partial qualifiers where football players wouldn't have to take all their course load at Nebraska. They could take it at like a community college or whatever, and as long as they partially qualified and had their GPA, they could play for Nebraska. Not a lot of schools took those guys. I don't think the Big Ten, they had a conference rule that they weren't taking any of them. Nebraska did, and they thrived. I mean, hell, look, Florida had 4 recruits that were all 4-stars not make it on campus because of that. Could you imagine if in today's day and age, those 4 guys all ended up in Nebraska this summer? That used to be a thing. So now they don't have that anymore. So people can debate it all they want. There's a clear line. Nebraska dropped off the map when that stopped happening. So I don't know if it's ever going to come back. You could say it was because they lost Tom Osborne. A bunch of other coaches came and went from different programs. Hell, look at like what happened with Jopa. They tried to nuke the Penn State program. Penn State jumped right back. I just think Nebraska's kind of in the middle of nowhere. I think their ceiling now is Iowa, which isn't bad by any means. I think Kirk Ferentz has a cycle down where every 4 years he has Iowa competing for a conference championship and possibly a spot in the playoffs. They're really close that one year. And it seems like every 4 years he has a cycle where he has a really good team, give or take a few years. And I think that's what Scott Frost has to do. Build it up till you get those guys as seniors, make your run, and then kind of reload. It's going to take some time just because you're not going to be able to have those national recruiting classes. They're just not going to pull those guys in. Look at the recruiting rankings. The Big Ten is very clear. Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. That's it. After that, there's a gigantic drop-off. Scott Frost, he didn't bring that clout with him. It would have been 100% different if Scott Frost came in and his first year, he had a top 10 recruiting class. I don't think he was anywhere close to that. He wasn't even in the top 3 in the Big Ten. So the fact that they're putting him in, I think that's just a nod to him saying, hey, 25 right now is a crapshoot. We're just going to put you guys in ranked. And I actually think that they did lose some votes, but just because some of the top teams gained them or something, they lost votes, but they still snuck into the rankings just because more of the votes were kind of split up. I don't know. I think that West right now looks like it could be Wisconsin. I joked about Wisconsin coming in and possibly laying an egg. They laid the smackdown. So maybe I'm wrong on that one.
247 has them at 18 right now.
For the recruiting class for what, next year?
This upcoming cycle.
And a lot of that's built on hype, Matt. So what's going to happen to that whenever they go without a bowl game this year? That's going to drop off. I mean, on the other hand, hell, maybe he proves me wrong. Maybe he makes it to a BCS bowl game and that recruiting ranking jumps up. That's where he has to make the step. But to your point on Willie Taggart's right now, he's recruiting near the top 10. If they let him recruit his guys in, you got to give him the years. You can't flip now. A lot of people... Well,
his class is at 9 right now.
Willie Taggart?
They jumped ahead of him.
Yeah, so right now, you got to go ahead and give him that time. If you cut him now, they lose that recruiting class, and guess what? You have to start all over. You're not going to be able to bring in a guy. That's where, like Pitt right now, they could bring in a new guy. I know, Matt, you said they should keep him. What are they going to lose? Their 50th ranked recruiting class?
Yeah, you got beat by everyone in the ACC.
I stand corrected. It's saying that they're 50 right now. Pitt's ranked ahead of Nebraska in the 2020 rankings.
So you're wrong. That was not even close, Matt. 18 to 50?
I looked it up quick, and then I double-checked my double-checking. It has Pitt at 35, and it has Nebraska at 50. with 2 4-star recruits and 8 3-stars. So they're at 50.
Yeah.
Michigan State, Boston College, Missouri, and Memphis are ahead of them right now. So he's there, and they have him anointed as being a playoff contender. And you got Florida State with 11 4-star, 10 3-star, and they're top 10 recruiting class, and just getting crapped on.
People want Taggart gone. That's why
they do.
If they get rid of him, like, unless you're bringing in a Dan Mullen, but I just don't know if Florida State has any coaches that have really good ties to them that would make that jump. Do you know of any?
No, and that's also a concern that I think if you jump the gun, aside from the fact that you're going to have a massive buyout because you signed Taggart to a longer guaranteed contract, that you're going to dump that money, and then what are you going to bring? I don't know the direction that you go in at that point, because you have half the team is transitioned with recruited by Jimbo Fisher in a pro style system. You have some of the guys that are recruited in under Willie Taggart's spread system. So, I mean, I guess it leaves it open that if you hire the right person, they have enough talent that you can do whatever with them. But maybe the move is get them all the hell out of the way and let Kendall Browse run the show.
Wait, I just had a thought come into my mind. What if they outbid people for Urban Meyer?
I have a better one. Tallahassee, bring the pirate home.
They're not going to bring him Mike Leach.
Give him the blank check. Tell him we'll cover the cost of whatever Texas Tech owes him. He can hang that beef up.
They wouldn't do that to me. My man Mike Leach is going to be out there. He's going to be at a no-name school for life. He's still fighting for Texas Tech over his missing paycheck. I hope one day he gets it. It's been a decade now, Mike. Or close to it. Was it 09 he left? Has to be close to a decade. So, I did have one more thing for the Big Ten that I said I was going to talk about, their stupid network. So the Big Ten, they get bought out with like their Big Ten app or whatever because Fox owns them. So Fox decides, hey, we're going to put all the Big Ten streaming games on Fox Sports app. And I thought, oh my God, this is awesome. No more shitty, do I have to look through and see replays of volleyball games that I don't care about just to find the game that they're supposed to be highlighting? I get on Fox Sports. I load the app. I click on the game. There's 3 games right there. Let's be picked right on it. The resolution, dudes, was like 200 pixels. It was so blown out for, I think it was like the Wisconsin game. No, was the Wisconsin game on there? I think that was on ESPN. I think the Rutgers game was on there, and it was close at first. And I thought, I'm going to turn this on. I want to see what happens. I couldn't see shit. The pixels were so big, I couldn't see the score at all. It just looked like I was playing Tecmo Bowl, and it just block. And I was like, okay, maybe it's the app. So I go ahead and I load up my computer, put it on the browser, because usually the browser's better. Same thing. And so I'm getting nervous at this point. I'm like, oh my God, Michigan's on this app. Or what are they going to do? Is it going to look like crap? Am I going to have to try to find someone else that's showing a stream in high definition for me to watch of their own television? Like someone could just stream their own TV, because people do that. Finally, the first couple games I watched on that were complete garbage. When the Michigan game rolled around, I don't know if they had all of their techs in the big house for Saturday night's game or if they just figured it out. But the game for Michigan was 100 times better. So Rutgers fans, and there was one other game, I just forget who it was. I feel bad for you guys. I'm sorry that you had to watch that stream if you watched on the Fox Sports app, because it was complete garbage. And I'm wondering if every other game that's not a primetime game, because that Michigan game was a game of the week for the Big Ten. It was like their night game. That was the first one that Michigan ever did too, by the way. Because if you remember, the Big Ten wanted to try to do Friday night games. And then Michigan said, no, we're not going to do that. That was the first night game at the Big House that was on the Big Ten Network. And it actually turned out pretty decent. So hopefully they got the kinks worked out. And hopefully the ACC Network gets the same amount of pickup as the SEC Network. I should not be able to watch the SEC Network and not the ACC. ESPN, you own both. I should see both. What are you doing? That's my final thoughts on the college football. We'll go around the horn one time. Matt, you got anything else for us?
Yeah, I had to laugh because when I was watching a lot of the games over the weekend, I thought, All we hear about when it comes to playoff time is how mighty the SEC is. And here we go, start of the year. And Oregon loses closely to Auburn, but then you have the power showing. You got Tennessee losing to Georgia State. You got Missouri losing to Wyoming, which, you know what? No one lives in Wyoming. If you know of someone that lived in Wyoming, you're a liar because it's barely even a state. And then you got South Carolina losing to UNC. Mac Brown just rolled out of AARP in retirement and pulled that win off. Like, there were fist fights in the parking lot and the whole shebang. Those are like South Carolina was supposed to be one of the teams they were saying, oh, they're going to be competing for the SEC championship this year. Bull. Don't give me this. Oh, it just means more. It doesn't. It means more to Alabama because they're the only one competitive.
Jeff, you got anything?
My final thoughts is the matchup coming up this weekend, LSU and Texas. LSU 6, Texas 9. LSU is an early 6-point favorite. I don't think Texas is going to win this game, but I think Texas is going to cover that spread. I think it's going to be a close game. So that's going to be my exciting matchup for next week. Texas, LSU. We'll learn a lot about the SEC and the Big 12.
Jeff, I just want to mention that game is a mirage. I know it quite well because of all those previous early Michigan Notre Dame matchups. You look at that and you say, holy cow, that's 2 top 10 teams. And then after that matchup, you watch that game, you're so excited, you're like, wow, so-and-so won that game, they're going to be awesome. Fast forward to November 2019, when both those teams are sitting with 4 losses, and they're barely ranked in the top 25. And people are like, remember when they had that great game? Yeah, I remember. Because that's where I feel like that game is going. Because LSU is not getting by. It looks like Auburn or Alabama, so that's 2 losses there. Mm-hmm. Who knows what else? They'll probably drop a few more. And then same with Texas. You're not going to get beat Oklahoma this year. And then who knows what else with the Big 12. It could be a shootout. It could be a mess. But I just don't think that game's going to matter in the long run. That's just me. What are your thoughts on that one, Matt?
I don't know.
I think Texas wins.
Yeah.
Well,
I think Texas stands a shot, but you know what? It's one of those games that I'll watch it on, but I don't really care one way or the other, to be quite honest. It is what it is. Because neither one of them are going to be playing for the championship. They're not going to make the playoffs. And you can bank on that right now.
Well, we have one other big matchup that I want you guys to pick. Texas A&M and Clemson. Matt, we'll start with you this time.
It's Clemson. It's not even close. You want acid?
But Jimbo Fisher.
What about it?
Didn't you get a tattoo of him?
No, I did not.
Oh. Could have fooled me. I thought you were such a big fan.
No. I mean, one of the statistics that I've seen pointed out a couple different times is that even Fisher's winning percentage was only like 600 or 700 outside of the years of Jameis Winston. So when he had Jameis, his percentage was much higher. The statistics were much higher, and you can speculate if you're one of those negative people, you could say, well, the only reason that he did anything was because he landed a top tier quarterback and was able to just ride his coattails to a national championship.
That's kind of what Dabo did, though. Get a couple big name QBs and you just keep cycling them out. Yeah,
well, then you know what happens when you don't hit on quarterbacks for 3 consecutive cycles and just stop recruiting altogether. You get this shit show that we're watching now this week. Fingers crossed we beat Louisiana Monroe, or I'll make it beat.
Hey, wait, wasn't that a shootout last year? Is that who I'm thinking of?
No, we almost lost to Samford last year.
Oh yeah, Samford. That's who.
Yeah.
My bad.
That quarterback's on the. Oh shoot, what team is he? He's playing all right in the the NFL preseason. He was playing all right. I can't remember what team he was on, but sorry, I just had to add that point. I just remember he was playing pretty good.
Who do you have in that game, Jeff?
Stanford's Coach Hatcher. That would be the one that would be a name that I would keep in mind if things go sideways for Taggart. Because Hatcher follows that Mike Leach tree and was a quarterback for him. He's done well at Valdosta State, and he's doing well at Samford. So he would be a name that I would consider.
All right. Good to know. Jeff, what do you got in this game?
Clemson by a mile. And I don't think A&M's got much. I'm not a Jimbo Fisher fan, even though Matty has his tattoo apparently. But no, I'll take Clemson though. They're way too good.
I think Clemson's at home. They get it done. I think if it was neutral site, it might be closer. But I'll just say that. And like I said, I think Texas takes the other one. I think it's mostly other than that. I think there's a bunch of crap showdowns. I thought Army-Michigan was going to be a good game to pick, which I still think the line is like 28 or something. I think you take Army and the points in that one. Because it
was 23 as of today.
Was it? It used to be higher, so a lot of people must be thinking along my lines. Because that's one of the ones where service academies, they milk the clock. So even if you win by double digits, you usually don't blow them out. So I would say that I would keep an eye on that one. I just think that's too big of a line, even if Michigan were to win. I know Army struggled with Rice. Was it Rice they played last weekend? So a lot of people, they dropped off the cliff. They were right there. They would have been ranked 26th if the AP poll was more than 25 because they had the next most receiving votes. But after the way they played, I think they kind of dropped in that aspect too. And so we'll be able to see. That's my pick of the week if you're gambling, though. Watch that line. Used to be 28. Matt said it's already down to 23. So you might have missed your chance because that's getting a little bit uncomfortable for me because that's only 3 touchdowns and a field goal. And that's hoping that Army scores a touchdown or two, which I'm sure they will because Michigan still has a young defense and they have a fresh defensive line. It's going to take a few weeks for that to mesh. Let's get into our big one. Steelers, Patriots. Week 1 of the NFL. I know I saved it till last. I should have put it at the top of the show. But college football actually had some games, and this is just all speculation. We got Ben Roethlisberger, Tom Brady, 2 handsome dudes out there. Jeff, why are you laughing at that? I saw a bunch of... Didn't you watch the one game? I don't think it was... Wait, was it the Thursday game or the Sunday game from last week? They had a ton of pictures of Ben Roethlisberger and his family on that broadcast. They just randomly showed a picture of him and his wife and his kids, and they talked about it for like 5 minutes. I'm like, what am I watching? Is this did someone change the channel to Lifetime? Why are they showing me this Ben Roethlisberger at home narrative? Because you know why? The NFL knows that he's ready. He's ready to make a deep playoff run, so they have to make sure people like him again. They don't.
That's a good point.
They don't want the dirty Ben out there because Tom Brady. Think about it. A couple years ago, they showed him kissing his son on the lips. And he loses to the Eagles in the Super Bowl because they knew they were like, let's get something shocking out there because they don't want handsome Tom Brady joking around on Jimmy Kimmel, throwing balls through windows on late night TV. Now he's back in the good graces. So you're having 2 great looking guys out there throwing the ball around. Who's your pick for the weekend? Jeff, we'll start with you.
Patriots are -5 at home. Games in Foxborough. ESPN has them a 74% likely to win this game, but I'm going to take the Steelers week 1. I'm going against Vegas. I'm going against ESPN. I'm going against everyone. I think the Steelers get it done. I think the Steelers come out on the road. James Conner runs the ball well. Ben does enough through the passing game with Juju and James Washington, and I like their chances. First game of the year, the Patriots aren't going to play well. But, I mean, the Patriots are going to be like every year we talk about it. They're going to make the playoffs. They're in the weak AFC East. They're going to have a shot. When you have Tom Brady at quarterback, you have a shot at winning a Super Bowl. So I think for the season, they'll be fine. But I know the last couple of years, Kansas City went up to Foxborough, beat up on them week 1. I think the Steelers got a shot, and I'm going to take the Steelers this weekend.
All right, Matt, that's a homer take for you. Matt, what is your pick?
It's Pittsburgh because they got rid of Bell and Brown. There's a lot that Roethlisberger has to prove because if he belly flops, then it just shows that the issues were on him and it wasn't on Brown and Bell. He sat out all the preseason, so he really didn't. He should be fully rested. He had enough time to work with everyone and get the chemistry going in camp. They need to just show it on the field.
I will say that first off, I had someone ask me, they were like, hey, you remember whenever you first started the show, you used to wear that terrible towel. And then, of course, the Steelers were good that year. They made the playoffs. And then last year, I don't think I wore it. And guess what? Steelers had an awful year. So I will say that I'm bringing it back this year. we're getting the terrible towel going, and I'm rocking it, and we're going to win. Steelers are going to take this game for the same reason Matt said. Antonio Brown's not on the field anymore. And I know a lot of people are going to say, but who's going to stretch the defense? I think the Steelers are going to come out, shock a lot of people. Are they going to go undefeated? Hell no. Are they going to win 13 games? Probably not. I would say maybe 10, 11. They're going to make the playoffs. But they're going to get this first one because I think the New England monkey's off their back. And New England's, they're having some issues signing guys, bringing guys out, getting it ineligible. And Belichick usually loses a bunch of games early. They turn it around mid-season. Now, obviously, Tom Brady or someone's usually suspended, so that might have a reason in why they lose those early games. But I'm saying right now, Steelers are going to win this one. A bunch of people are going to overreact and say, oh, my God, Steelers are going to be Super Bowl pick. So if you want to bet on the Steelers making the Super Bowl, bet now while they're dogs to New England, because once they win, that money line is going to go through the roof, and it's going to suck if you try to bet on the Steelers early season winning the Super Bowl. I will say, too, that, yes, I think I'm wearing the same Michigan shirt I wore last week because, of course, Michigan won. So I'm very superstitious right now. We're going to keep doing the terrible towel. Steelers are going to keep winning. I'm going to wear the same Michigan shirt until Michigan loses, which hopefully is never. And I'll get a national championship and a Super Bowl win. So it'll be great. And I'll love it, every minute of it. Anything else you guys got for the NFL? Matt says no. Jeff, what about you?
The only thing I saw when you guys were ripping on me in their fantasy league for picking up McCoy, he's now going to be a Kansas City Chief. So my fantasy pick just got a whole lot better because I don't think was it Damian Williams, whatever the starting running back is for the Chiefs. I don't think he's going to be the number one guy at the end of the year. When I think the Chiefs are going to be making their Super Bowl run, I think McCoy is going to be carrying the rock a lot for Kansas City.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I took the gamble on Damian Williams because I think the opposite. Well, first off, come on, Andy Reid. What an idiot. You really screwed me there because the news breaks. The news breaks first that they're trading. Who's the other running back? Carlos Hyde. So the news breaks that they're trading him, and I think, oh my God, this is great. Damian Williams is going to fall to me. I'll be able to nab him for cheap, which I did. And so I thought this is going to be great. He's going to be the number one. He just broke off a 65-yard touchdown run early in the week, I believe. And so he was looking good. And, of course, he brings in McCoy. But the opposite of your point, McCoy is old, Jeff.
Yeah.
So I don't care if Damian Williams splits time with him at the beginning of the year because I want Williams to be ready for my playoff run. Let McCoy handle those early one because he's friends with Andy Reid or whatever happens. But he's bound to get hurt. I've had McCoy on my fantasy team before. He'll get injured for you. It'll be heartbreak, and you'll be saying, "Why are all my guys injured?" And
I'm complete opposite thought of you.
Well, we'll see what happens because I know I made fun of you, and as soon as I saw that, I thought, well, one of us is going to be happy this year.
Yeah.
It's either going to be you or it's going to be me because it's going to be one of those two guys, I believe, that's going to eat up a lot of those points for Kansas City because I'm going with the same strategy that a lot of people use for James Conner. You think Le'Veon Bell, losing him, there was going to be a gigantic drop-off? Conner got all those fantasy points back. So I'm really hoping that Mahomes can get things together and one of our running backs really takes it home because I think that's going to put one of us over the edge. Also, I brought back my man, David Johnson, so I'm praying every day that he stays healthy. That's my final thought. What do you guys got for the final bell? Matt, you're laughing. We'll start with you.
Just go to southboundsports.com. check out our store. Buy yourself some nice clothes. Enjoy some football. The wonderful football season's upon us. Support the show. Click through our Amazon link. It's great. You can get some stuff. You can help us. You don't even have to do anything. You can keep being a lazy slug. Just click through. There you go. Make some purchases. Buy your Halloween costume. Give back to the show.
And definitely tell your friends. And if there's any topics you want to hit on the show, send them to us on Twitter or Facebook. You can even comment on our site. We'll get them that way. I've been trying to get some extra stuff, some extra content going this football season. So we'll see if that, what all I can get up and how that goes. But if you have any suggestions, please let us know. And we'll try to get that stuff out there. Jeff, what do you got for the final bell?
Just a little bit more about the Steelers-Patriots game. I think it's very, very important the Steelers start off with a win here. Because if they don't, they then play home against the Seahawks. And I don't know, I'm still big on the Seahawks and Russell Wilson, so I don't want to see the Steelers starting the season 0-2. I'd like them to get a win here, get some momentum, obviously take that momentum into the Seahawks and start the season out 2-0. They need to rebound after last year, the debacle in Cleveland when they started the season off with a tie with the Browns. I'm really looking forward to a much better start of the season. Like Maddie said and you said, got rid of the clowns. AB, Bell, gone. It's time to focus on football. Big Ben's going to have a big year, and the defense is going to play a little better this year.
Jeff, first off, you can't call them the clowns because let me just rewind here. That's my rewind sound.
Yeah.
I remember 2 years ago when you were on this show, you were super pumped about the Killer Bees.
I was. I was hook, line, and sinker. I was all about the Killer Bees. I mean, at that point 2 years ago, before the drama with Le'Veon, he was arguably a top 3 running back in the league. AB was the best receiver in the league. The only other person you say, Julio Jones, at that point 2 years ago, maybe better, but it just all unraveled with the drama, the locker room issues, the off-the-field issues, Le'Veon Bell smoking weed, doing all the stupid stuff, holding out, AB driving his car 120 miles per hour down McKnight Road, just doing crazy stuff, getting fights, like even domestic violence stuff that the media somehow didn't bring up with him and his, I don't know if it's his girlfriend or his wife or whatever, but I'm looking forward to a season not filled with drama. We've got a lot of young talent, the Steelers, on offense and defense. Considering you bring in Bush, you bring in some new pieces. It looks very promising. We'll see, though. We'll see.
Don't worry, you're going to get to see Ben Roethlisberger's family during broadcast because the TV team already has that lined up. And you'll get to talk about how great family guys these guys are, Jeff. So you won't have to worry about the off-the-field stuff.
I love it. And Juju will be dancing, and hopefully he's dancing in the end zone a lot this year because I got him in our Hennessy League for way too much.
Don't worry about fantasy. That's dumb. You shouldn't even play. That's my tip. But that's all we have for this week. So thanks for listening. Again, tell your friends and any big topics you want to hit on. We'll be giving you the best football content every week. Steelers, NFL stuff with some Big Ten news and some ACC stuff to go with our college football overall breakdown. And we will see you guys next week. So thanks for listening.